try to not be too bad here.
Careful.
Yeah.
What?
What? Don't shoot me.
What?
Weird shit going on back here.
Hi.
Hi. Are you being interviewed right now?
She's
I was about
to
to.
start.
Can I squeeze in here?
That's going in the outtake reel. Alright, so, hi.
Hi.
See?
Oh, I'm looking at you, right?
Yeah, basically.
cool.
So I'm with BuddyTV, and we're just...
Oh, I like BuddyTV.
Do you?
I do,
Awesome.
because I ended up on the 20 sexiest women for fall's new shows list.
I bet
so.
you did, yeah. Well, I'll tell John is the guy who made that
Exciting.
slideshow. I will tell him you were happy to see
Thank you,
yourself on it.
Thank you, John.
He does love making those lists. That's like his pride and joy is the sexiest
Everybody
people
loves
list.
a good list.
Yes, pretty much. So anyway, wanted to ask you about your character in Grimm. So who are you playing, and anything you tell me about her?
I play Juliet Silverton. I'm Nick Burkhart, who's the head detective on the show. I'm his girlfriend. I am a veterinarian, which hasn't come in handy yet with some of the creatures, but undoubtedly will.
Mm-hmm.
And right now they're really just playing with the fact that he can't tell me what's going on.
Right.
So I'm like, what the hell? Why are you being so weird?
Okay, so what do you end up doing usually? Are you just at home with Nick? Are
A
you
lot
out
of it
doing
is you know being a good girlfriend. We've been dating for quite a while. In the pilot episode, he's getting a ring because he wants to propose to me. So it's a lot of what you would expect a normal relationship between someone who's dating a detective or a cop would be like, where he's telling me about his cases and I am commenting on them. A lot of it's just being really loving and supportive. And there's a whole lot of kissing that happens and nuzzling and snuggling and yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So what was it about a show like Grimm that drew you to it? What were you interested in about it?
One of the reasons I loved the pilot script so much, not only because it was Jim Califf and David Greenwald's new show, and I was a big fan of Buffy and Angel, but a lot of people don't know that the original Grimm fairy tales, when they were first put to paper 2 centuries ago, they were extremely gruesome and frightening and terrifying and bloody and gory,
Right.
because we're used to the child version of the fairy tales, and the showrunners were making a concerted effort to go back to not suitable for children kind of version.
So this will not be suitable for children? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not going to say that. I might get in trouble, but it's scary.
Right.
It's definitely scary.
So would you compare this more to like the horror shows, the monster shows, than say more children's version of fairy tales? Is it more like something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer than what you would expect?
Absolutely.
Or?
This is definitely more of an adult version of a fairy tale. And the idea of a fairy tale, I think you kind of think of this like enchanted wonderland, and I think it's more of like your waking nightmare. Like, how would you really feel if, in my case with my character, how would you really feel if a loved one or a boyfriend or someone came home and said, "I'm seeing monsters," in all sincerity? That'd be really terrifying. It'd be so scary. But yeah, one of the great things about Grimm is that it's kind of a genre show, and I feel like genre fans are like the best fans to have.
Right.
But it's like 18 different genres squished into one. It's people who are interested in horror, in thriller, in procedural, in fairy tale, in supernatural. There's in the romance. There's a whole lot going on.
Right.
Fairly seamlessly.
Which is good.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the really horrible fairy tales that we don't necessarily know about. Do you have a favorite fairy tale, especially of the Grimm Brothers fairy tales, the original type? Is there anyone that really just works for you? Or?
My favorite fairy tales were like Cinderella and Snow White, but I knew the child version of it. I would say of the really creepy, scary ones, the episode we're shooting right now, which is called Dance Macabre, which is a spin-off of the Pied Piper, and which is, I think, one of the creepiest of the Grimm's fairy tales. That's kind of my favorite so far that we've done.
So you were talking about like sort of scary monsters. Have you been in scenes with scary things so far? Have you been able to be protected from that?
I've been very much protected from the creepy monsters and scary stuff so far, but I do have a scene right now where I'm in the presence of someone who's just morphed. He's a fairly harmless creature. The guy's a beaver, and they're not creepy monster beavers. They're fairly harmless, but they are creatures.
Right.
And so it was interesting having to reshoot the scene a couple times with the guy having the VFX dots on his face.
Okay.
And he'll also have to do some stuff with prosthetics, but so far I've been pretty much like insulated from all that.
So why do you think, with 2 shows coming on this year that have to do with fairy tales, movies coming out all over the place, they're talking about more fairy tale TV shows, why do you think that's happening right now? What has spurred all this on? What do you think?
I think it probably just took a couple people to make that leap and say, let's make an adult version of these fairy tales. But the reality is the Brothers Grimm wrote these down. They didn't write the stories; they were collecting them really, and they put them on paper over 2 centuries ago. And everybody's familiar with Rumpelstiltskin and Hansel and Gretel and Little Red Riding Hood. So I don't think they've ever really gone out of popularity. I think it's just a matter of 1 or 2 people being like, let's go back to their original inception. Let's go back to that gruesome kind of adult spin-off.
So what do you think is going to actually draw people into Grimm specifically? Like, what is it about these fairy tales? What about the story?
I have to say, and I'm obviously biased, I think the show is ridiculously entertaining. I really do. It's just one of those shows you're going to want to tune into on a Friday night if you're at home or DVR.